Welcome to the CIO Watercooler TV. My name is David Savage. I'm your host for today, and I'm joined by Mark Ridley, who is the leader of a CTO advisory practice.
That's right, yeah.
And you work with, 2 to 3 different organisations at any particular time for up to maybe 3 or 6 months intensively, and then tailing off to a certain degree after that, correct?
Yeah, exactly right. And I particularly like working with scale-ups. I think it's quite an underserved part of the technology leadership area. So typically 20 to 100 people, often very fast growing, and really experiencing those growing pains of how do I really develop a professional technology practice.
Those scale-ups then, they would tend to have someone who is a CTO in name, but do they tend to maybe be a head of product or a head of engineering in another organisation's eyes?
Yeah, it really varies, and that's actually one of the reasons that I really like it. My career, I was the technical co-founder of Read.co.uk, which became a reasonable sized, so 350 person business, and I was there for 18 years, so I started from the very beginning and worked all the way through all of the technology roles in the organisation. So I was afforded all of this privilege of being able to learn at a very organic rate. Often when you go into these small organisations, there is somebody who is an exceptional individual contributor. So potentially a head of engineering, an IT director, depending on the type of business, and it really varies business to business what the role is. And either they have been made the CTO and are discovering that it's maybe not what they thought it was, or they are toying with the idea of stepping up into the CTO role. It's something that they want to do, but they don't know yet whether they want to do it. And that's obviously also in these businesses, the CEO is often still very hands-on. Often a lot of product responsibility still sits with the CEO. So I sort of go in as a CEO whisperer to try and translate tech.
Is there an added dynamic that you have to navigate in that maybe that person is also a co-founder of the business, and it's their business and they're passionate about it, but they're also trying to find their own way in terms of how they fit into it longer term?
Incredibly so. And again, because of my background working in an organisation that had existed for 60 years and coming in with lots of good management practice inside the business, what you find in totally founder-driven organisations is there's strong vision, strong leadership, but maybe the strategy is weaker or the go-to-market is because there isn't this structure of other business functions around them. And potentially, especially in venture-backed companies, so I spend around half of my time working with venture-backed businesses, there is a very different understanding of what the go-to-market is, because actually what you're looking for is the next round of funding. You're looking at how can I exit this business to keep the investors happy. That's very different to growing an organic business. So I like to try and keep myself honest by balancing the portfolio and having some very organic growth businesses and some venture-backed businesses.
So look, we're recording this, I'm not exactly sure when it'll go out, but we are recording this towards the end of November. Yeah. So we're getting towards the end of 2019. Yeah. If you think about the work that you've done over the course of this year, what trends do you see emerging? Because in technology, we often get very excited about the buzzwords, but that might be a little bit further ahead than where we are now.
I think that's definitely true. I've been introduced to any number of companies that the first pitches were an IoT and machine learning AI business, and when you actually go in, you understand that's really not what their business is doing at all. But I think looking back over this year, and it's something I spend quite a lot of my time doing, trying to stay current with what the state of broader technology is, technology companies and the implementation of tech. One of the things that's been fascinating for me this year is really understanding that there is the availability of these building blocks of the next generation of tech is becoming more and more profuse. So I was around at sort of the beginning of companies developing their own websites and the dot-com boom, and one of the big changes was the democratization of the ability to build websites. And I think what we're seeing now is a similar thing happening with the ability to build machine learning. So the tool sets that are available from Microsoft, from Amazon, from Google to democratize the use of machine learning, to make it so that you don't have to be a deeply mathematical statistician to work as a data scientist, but actually you can be a mechanic. You can actually just know how to slot certain things together, is going to be extremely profound. So I think it's not just that it's machine learning, it's the availability of all these different toolkits from all of these first-class, very significant players in the market.
That's interesting. I mean, I would love to know what you think the effect of that will be on the market over the next year. If I think about my day job in terms of running a podcast, I tend to talk to lots of doctorpreneurs, not just medical professionals, let's say, but it's a nice way of phrasing people who are coming from outside of technology and using technology to apply it to a singular problem that they are passionate about. Yeah. And I suppose, given what you're saying, those building blocks make it easier for people to do that.
Yeah, much easier. We started to see this really with the growth of the cloud. So when AWS first came to market, there were obviously lots of barriers, but what it really did fundamentally was lower the barrier to entry to market for small businesses. Because when I started in IT, I was buying hardware, and I would need to spend a very considerable amount of money on tin that I was going to put in a data center that had a long contract, and so I needed a very robust business case to explain exactly what I thought was going to happen 3 years in the future, which obviously never really came to pass. But I was spending very significant amounts of money. The first servers that I bought cost more than my car did. And what suddenly happened in the startup world was you could create a small application and put it onto the cloud, and you would pay on your credit card, and it was just paid by utilization. And I think whilst that led to this first really big wave of startups coming through sort of the mid-2000s to the early 2010s when mobile application tech really boomed, I think we're seeing the same thing again now. So what's happening is really the creation of any application, any delivery mechanism that a company doesn't need to have a logistics team or a distribution. It can go to market almost you create a marketing website, you create a product. In the mid sort of 2010s, the teens, that was you would outsource development and potentially find an offshore partner to build you something. But I think what's happening now, exactly as you're highlighting, is it's really easy for an entrepreneur to just plug and play their own business. If it's a service that you want to deliver, I've worked with some great companies that work in that sort of that health space where what they want to do is just connect a practitioner and a patient. You don't actually need very much to do that. To create a video chat mechanism, it's pretty easy now.
One last final point then, before we wrap up. We mentioned some of those buzzwords.
Yep.
In a word, if there was going to be one that you'd think might make a big impact next year, which might it be?
That is a great question. Just before walking in here today, one of the things that really caught my eye was how much something called AutoML is advancing. So you can think about that very much as one of these building blocks. So auto machine learning, Google have just released this to Kaggle, which is a competitive data science competition platform. And I think the ability to just allow people to very trivially use these AutoML type features, Microsoft has its own version, I think will be a really interesting exploration for businesses to take on next year.
Let's catch up at the end of 2020 and see if that's the case. Great. Thank you for sharing some insight and some thoughts on this year.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you've enjoyed CIO Water Cooler TV today. If you would like to find out more content, there will be links below this video.